The crystal spires of the galactic court reflected 1,000 suns, but inside the grand chamber, silence pressed like a physical weight. Princess Volula of the Andromeda Syndicate stood on the raised dais, her 4 arms folded in the traditional posture of unwilling patience, her obsidian eyes scanning the assembled delegates with barely concealed disdain. She was the most contested prize in known space, daughter of Queen Zaratha, heir to 17 star systems, bearer of genetic patterns so rare that her children would command economies. For 3 solar cycles, suitors had come. For 3 solar cycles, she had refused them all. The Krovan ambassador stepped forward first, his carapace gleaming with ceremonial oils. He lasted 4 minutes before her questions about resource distribution treaties made him stumble. The Velcorn prince managed 6, until she asked him to name the agricultural output of his home system's tertiary colonies. One by one, they came. One by one, they failed. Not through cruelty, Volula never raised her voice, but through the simple, devastating precision of someone who had studied every species, every culture, every weakness in the galactic political structure. She didn't need warriors. She needed someone who understood power. Queen Zaratha watched from her throne of living metal, her expression unreadable. The court whispered that she had designed these trials herself, that she wanted her daughter to remain unmarried, unclaimed. Others said she simply wanted someone worthy. The truth, as always, lived somewhere in the shadow between. Captain Marcus Rivera stood at the back of the chamber, his human frame dwarfed by the towering aliens around him. He wasn't supposed to be here. Humans were new to the galactic stage, barely 2 generations since first contact, still primitive by most standards, still treated like ambitious children playing at politics. His uniform marked him as Earth's diplomatic escort, nothing more. He was here to observe, to learn to stay silent. Then he saw the child. She was the Sien, no more than 4 solar years old by her species reckoning, her parents standing rigidly in the supplicant section. The girl's bioluminescent patches flickered with distress, the Sien equivalent of tears. She dropped something, a small crystalline toy, and it had skittered across the polished floor, coming to rest directly at the base of the dais. Directly in the princess's sight line. Protocol forbade anyone from crossing that space during the trials. The child didn't understand protocol. She understood only that her treasure was gone. Marcus watched the parents' faces twist with horror as their daughter took a wobbling step forward. The guards' hands moved to their weapons, not to harm, never to harm a child, but to remove her, to restore order. The humiliation would be absolute. The family would be barred from court, possibly exiled. All because a child wanted her toy. He moved before thinking. 3 strides carried him across the forbidden space. He knelt, smoothed and controlled, and retrieved the crystal. The chamber's silence shifted quality, becoming sharp, dangerous. He could feel eyes on him, thousands of them, representing hundreds of species. He had violated protocol. Humans didn't have enough political capital to violate anything. Marcus turned to the child, held out the toy, and smiled. She took it with trembling fingers, her bioluminescence shifting to grateful gold. He stood, bowed to her parents, a human gesture, meaningless to Thaxians, but the intent was clear, and only then did he turn to face the dais. Princess Volula was staring at him. Not with anger. With something far more dangerous, interest. "Name," she said. Her voice carried the harmonic undertones of her species, each word layered with multiple meanings. In Syndicate Standard, she was asking his designation. In the ceremonial dialect, she was asking his worth. "Captain Marcus Rivera, Earth Diplomatic Corps. You broke protocol." "Yes, Your Highness. You could have allowed the guards to handle the situation. I could have." She tilted her head, a gesture that made the ceremonial neural crown on her brow catch the light. "Why didn't you?" Marcus met her obsidian eyes without flinching. Around them, the court held its breath. A human, addressing the princess directly. A human, standing in the trial space reserved for suitors. The implications cascaded like falling stars. "Because protocol is a tool," he said quietly. "And tools should serve people, not the other way around." The silence stretched. Queen Zaratha leaned forward on her throne, the first movement she'd made in hours. The guards remained still, awaiting orders that didn't come. Somewhere in the crowd, an ambassador made a sound that might have been shock or might have been awe. Princess Volula descended from the dais. She moved with the fluid grace of her kind, each step deliberate, until she stood directly before Marcus. Even with the height difference, the power dynamic was clear. She could end him with a word. She could end Earth's entire diplomatic presence with a gesture. "You're not here as a suitor," she said. "No, Your Highness. You have no claim to make. No political advantage to offer. Your species barely controls a single solar system. Correct on all counts." Her expression shifted just slightly. In human terms, it might have been the beginning of a smile. In syndicate terms, it was the look of a predator recognizing another predator's scent. "Then, why are you still standing here, Captain Rivera?" Marcus glanced at the Decian child, now safe in her mother's arms, her toy clutched tight. He looked back at the princess. "Because you asked me a question, Your Highness. It seemed rude to leave without answering." For the first time in 3 solar cycles, Princess Volula laughed. The sound was brief, controlled, but genuine. She turned to face the assembled court, her 4 arms spreading in a gesture of proclamation. "Clear the chamber," she said. "The trials are concluded for today." The court erupted. Not in chaos. These were civilized beings, after all, but in urgent, whispered conferences. Ambassadors conferred with advisors. The previous suitors stared at Marcus, with expressions ranging from confusion to outrage. The human had done nothing according to form. He had no right to her attention. Yet he had it. As the delegates filed out, Queen Zaratha remained on her throne, her gaze fixed on the human captain. When the last echo of footsteps faded, she spoke. "Captain Rivera, approach." Marcus walked forward, aware that he was now alone in a room with 2 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. His training screamed at him to be cautious. His instincts told him caution was already irrelevant. "My daughter is intrigued by you," the queen said. "This is inconvenient." "I apologize for any inconvenience, Your Majesty." "Do you?" Volula interjected. "Or are you precisely as reckless as you appear?" Marcus considered his next words carefully. In the diplomatic corps, they taught you to weigh every syllable, to consider every political ramification. But standing here, in this moment, he realized that calculation was exactly what would fail him. The princess had rejected calculated suitors for 3 solar cycles. "I'm a soldier, Your Highness. I learned a long time ago that sometimes the right choice and the safe choice aren't the same thing. And today the right choice was to risk an interstellar incident for a child's toy. Today the right choice was to help someone who needed help." Volula exchanged a look with her mother. The communication was wordless, complex, the product of decades of understanding between 2 rulers. When Volula turned back to Marcus, something had shifted in her bearing. "You will remain at court," she said. Not a request. Not quite an order. Something in between. "Your Highness, I'm not qualified to. You are qualified to be interesting, Captain." "In 3 solar cycles, you are the first being to be interesting. That alone makes you dangerous." She paused. "Or valuable. We shall determine which." Queen Zaratha rose from her throne, the movement flowing like water despite her massive frame. My daughter will test you, human. She will push you until you break or until you prove unbreakable. If you are wise, you will leave this court tonight and never return." Marcus looked at the queen. He looked at the princess. He thought about the child's grateful face, about the weight of protocol, about the simple truth that had driven him across that forbidden space. "With respect, Your Majesty, I don't think wisdom has much to do with it anymore." Viola's expression finally broke into something unmistakable, a genuine smile. "No," she said softly. "I don't suppose it does." The next morning, Marcus woke to find his quarters had been moved. No longer in the human delegation wing, he'd been assigned rooms in the court's diplomatic residential sector, space usually reserved for ambassadors and high-level negotiators. The message was clear. His status had changed. What it had changed to, exactly, remained dangerously ambiguous. The summons arrived before breakfast. Not to the public court, but to the Queen's private gardens, a space where policy was truly made, away from the performance of the Grand Chamber. Marcus dressed carefully, checking his uniform twice, then gave up on the pretense that preparation would help. He was navigating without a map now. The gardens defied human comprehension. Plants from 1,000 worlds grew in impossible proximity, separated by energy fields that created custom environments. Marcus walked through a tunnel of crystalline ferns from Velcoria, past a grove of singing trees from the Pella's system, until he found Princess Volula standing beside a pool of liquid mercury that somehow supported blooming flowers. She wore simpler clothing today, still formal by any standard, but lacking the full ceremonial weight. Her neural crown was absent, revealing the elegant structure of her skull, the subtle patterns of her natural coloring. "You came," she said without turning. "You summoned me, Your Highness. I gave you an opportunity to reconsider, to flee." She turned now, and her expression was unreadable. "Most would have taken it. I'm not most, apparently." "No." She gestured to a bench carved from a single piece of crystallized time, a material so rare that the bench itself probably cost more than Earth's entire gross planetary product. "Sit. We should speak plainly." Marcus sat. Viola remained standing, pacing slightly, her 4 arms moving through gestures of thought. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its formal edge. "Do you know why I rejected the others? I assume they failed to meet your standards. Everyone fails to meet someone's standards, Captain. That's not the reason." She turned to face him directly. "I rejected them because they wanted me for what I represent. Power, genetic advantage, political alliance. They looked at me and saw a tool for their ambitions. And you want someone who sees you as a person. I want—" She paused, and, for the first time, Marcus saw uncertainty flicker across her face. "I want someone who would cross a forbidden space for a crying child. Someone who makes decisions based on what's right rather than what's advantageous. Your Highness, I'm not here to court you. I know. That's why you're dangerous." Marcus absorbed that. In the pool beside them, the mercury flowers pulsed with inner light, responding to some chemical cue invisible to human senses. "Yesterday, in the court," Viola continued, "you did something no one else has done. You surprised me. Not with strength or intelligence or political maneuvering. You surprised me by being genuinely decent." She laughed, the sound bitter. "Do you have any idea how rare that is at this level of power?" "I'm beginning to. The suitors will return today. They always return. And now they'll be watching you, wondering what advantage you possess, what secret leverage Earth is playing." Her obsidian eyes fixed on him. "You've made yourself a target, Captain Rivera. I hope you understand that. Are you warning me or threatening me, Your Highness?" "I'm being honest with you." Another dangerous novelty. She sat down beside him, close enough that he could see the subtle iridescence in her skin. My mother thinks you're a distraction. She may be right. But I find myself hoping she's wrong. What do you think I am? Viola was quiet for a long moment. I think you're someone who acts without calculating the cost. In my world, that makes you either a fool or something precious. She stood, and the formal bearing returned like armor. Today, you will stand with the court again. The suitors will attempt to humiliate you, to expose your inadequacy. They will fail, not because you're superior, but because you're not playing the same game. What game am I playing, Your Highness? She looked down at him, and her expression held something that might have been respect or might have been fear. That's what terrifies me, Captain. I don't think you're playing one at all. The grand chamber felt different when Marcus entered it. The eyes that tracked him now held calculation, hostility, curiosity. The human delegation sat in their assigned section, and Marcus could see the ambassadors barely control panic. Whatever political careful stepping they'd been doing, he just kicked over the board. Princess Viola took her place on the dais. Queen Zaratha sat on her throne. The dazed supplicants assembled. But now Marcus stood in a different position, not at the back with the observers, but in the section reserved for court officials. The placement was deliberate, provocative. It declared that he had status, even if no one could quite define what that status was. The first suitor was a Drex Admiral, his ceremonial battle armor gleaming with campaign medals. He approached the dais with military precision, bowed with perfect form, and began his formal address. Every word was calculated, every gesture practiced. He spoke of strategic alliances, of unified military strength, of the glory that would come from joining their houses. Viola listened with polite attention. Then she glanced at Marcus. Captain Rivera, in your military experience, what is the primary cause of alliance failures? The chamber went silent. The Drex Admiral's face darkened. In his species, the color shift indicated fury. She was asking the human to critique military strategy in front of a decorated war leader. Marcus stood slowly. In my experience, Your Highness, alliances fail when they're based on strength rather than trust. Strength can always find a stronger opponent. Trust is harder to defeat. Interesting. Admiral Crexus, would you agree? The Admiral's response was clipped, barely civil. He withdrew shortly after. The humiliation was complete. The next suitor fared no better. A Velcorn merchant prince, speaking eloquently of trade routes and economic prosperity. Viola listened, then asked Marcus about Earth's resource distribution philosophies. Marcus spoke about sustainability, about long-term planning over short-term profit. The merchant prince's entire platform crumbled under the implicit comparison. One by one, she used him. Not as a weapon, that would have been too crude. As a mirror, reflecting back the inadequacies of traditional power structures. By midday, the remaining suitors had withdrawn. By afternoon, the court was in chaos. Marcus found himself surrounded by ambassadors, all demanding to know Earth's intentions, humanity's play. He had no answers. He barely understood the situation himself. When the session finally ended, Queen Zaratha called him to the throne room. Alone. You are disrupting the order of my court, she said without preamble. That was not my intention, Your Majesty. Intention is irrelevant. Effect is what matters. She studied him with ancient eyes. My daughter is the most valuable political asset in this sector. Her marriage will reshape power structures that have been stable for millennia. And now she is using a human, a species we barely acknowledge, to dismantle her suitors. I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I can withdraw. If I wanted you to withdraw, you would already be on a ship back to Earth. Possibly in pieces. She leaned forward. What I want, Captain Rivera, is to understand what you truly are. Are you a naive idealist who stumbled into something beyond his comprehension? Or are you the most sophisticated player to enter this court in generations? Marcus met her gaze. I'm someone who helped a child retrieve her toy, Your Majesty. Everything else happened around me, not because of me. That answer would be more convincing if you weren't standing in the throne room of the most powerful being in 17 star systems, having survived 3 days of attention from my daughter. She stood, and her full height was impressive, even frightening. Here is political reality, human. Viola is interested in you. That interest has consequences. Species will recalculate their strategies. Old alliances will be questioned. Some will see opportunity. Others will see threat. And you, Your Majesty? What do you see? Zaratha smiled, and it was not a comforting expression. I see a variable I cannot yet calculate. I dislike variables. She descended from her throne, each step echoing in the vast chamber. My daughter believes you are genuine, that your decency is not performance. She may be right. But genuine decency at this level of power is its own form of danger. I don't want to cause problems too late. She stopped directly in front of him. You will continue attending court. You will continue responding to my daughter's questions. And you will be watched, constantly, by beings far more dangerous than you can imagine. If you are false, they will expose you. If you are genuine, they will try to destroy you. Either way, you have chosen a difficult path. I didn't choose. You crossed the forbidden space, Captain. You made a choice. Own it. That night, Marcus found a message waiting in his quarters. Not digital, physical, written on actual paper in elegant script. The words were simple. Meet me at the southern observation deck. After midnight. Come alone. The observation deck was empty when he arrived, the viewing ports showing the slow rotation of nearby star systems. Princess Viola stood at the central window, her 4 arms wrapped around herself in a gesture that seemed almost vulnerable. I owe you an apology, she said without turning. Your Highness? I used you today. In court, I turned you into a weapon against people who have legitimate intentions, who have done nothing wrong except fail to interest me. She finally looked at him. That was unfair. Marcus approached carefully. You're testing them. Trying to find someone worthy. Worthy. She laughed bitterly. What does that even mean? Someone strong enough? Smart enough? Someone who can match me in debate, who can navigate court politics, who can produce genetically optimal offspring. She turned back to the stars. Or someone who would help a child without calculating the cost? Maybe both. Both is impossible. The skills that make someone effective at this level, calculation, ruthlessness, strategic thinking, they're antithetical to genuine kindness. You can't maintain power while leading with compassion. My mother taught me that before I could walk. And yet you want someone who does exactly that. Viola's silence was confirmation. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. Do you know what happens to my species when we bond? True bonding, not political arrangement. It's neurological. Permanent. We share thoughts, emotions, experiences. We become partially each other. She looked at him. I could choose any of those suitors. I could make a strategic alliance. But I would spend the rest of my life, centuries, Captain, bound to someone who sees me as an asset. So you're looking for love. I'm looking for someone who sees me. Actually sees me, not the crown, or the power, or the genetic value. Someone whose mind I would want in my head for eternity. Her expression became fierce. Do you understand how rare that is? How many beings in this entire galaxy are capable of that kind of genuine connection? Marcus thought about Earth, about the billions of humans struggling to find real connection in a much smaller pond. Probably fewer than you hope. definitely fewer than I need. She moved closer. And then you appear. A human. A species we barely acknowledged. You break protocol for a child, you speak truth to power without calculation, and you stand in my court like you belong there despite having no right to exist in that space. Her obsidian eyes searched his face. Tell me you're real, Captain. Tell me this isn't some elaborate human deception. I'm real. Prove it. Marcus hesitated. How? Stay. Keep attending court. Keep being whatever you are. And when the threats come, and they will come, don't run. She reached out with one of her 4 hands, stopping just short of touching him. Because if you're genuine, if you're truly what you appear to be, then you're the most valuable thing I've found in 3 solar cycles of searching. And I will protect valuable things. And if I'm not? If I'm just a soldier who made an impulsive choice? Then my mother will be right. And this will end badly for both of us. She withdrew her hand. But I don't think you're that simple, Marcus Rivera. I think you're exactly what you appear to be. Someone who makes hard choices look easy because you're not thinking about the consequences. Someone who acts from principle rather than strategy. Her voice softened. Someone I desperately want to be real. The next morning brought consequences. The Drex ambassador filed a formal complaint, claiming human interference in sovereign courtship rituals. The Velcorn Trade Consortium threatened economic sanctions against Earth. 3 minor delegations withdrew from court entirely, citing human disruption. The carefully balanced political structure that sustained the Galactic Court was beginning to crack. Earth's ambassador, a career diplomat named Chun, pulled Marcus into a private conference room. What the hell are you doing? I'm honestly not sure anymore, sir. Well, figure it out, because you're about to start a war. Chun paced frantically. The Drex have military superiority in this sector. The Velcorn control half the trade routes between here and Earth. You've offended them both in 3 days. I didn't mean your intentions don't matter. Results matter. And the result is that Earth, our entire species, is now a political liability because one captain couldn't follow basic diplomatic protocol. Marcus absorbed that. Chin was right. He'd been so focused on the immediate, on helping the child, on responding to Viola's questions, that he hadn't considered the larger ramifications. What do you want me to do, sir? Chin stopped pacing. I want you to apologize. Publicly. Withdraw from court. Give them a face-saving exit. And if Princess Viola won't accept that, then make her accept it. Earth can't afford this attention, Marcus. We're too new, too weak. We need to be invisible until we're strong enough to be visible. Marcus thought about Viola's words from the night before. About being real. About staying. About the threats that would come. I can't do that, sir. That's not a request, Captain. It's an order. Then I resign my commission. The words hung in the air between them. Chen's face cycled through shock, anger, and something that might have been grudging respect. You're serious? Yes, sir. For her? For a princess you met 3 days ago? For the principles, sir. I crossed that space because it was right. If I apologize now, if I withdraw, I'm saying it wasn't right. I'm saying protocol matters more than people. Chin sat down heavily. They're going to destroy you. You understand that? The suitors, the ambassadors, the political machines of a dozen species. They're going to come after you with everything they have. I know. And you're doing this anyway. Yes, sir. Chin was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something surprising. He smiled. My grandfather fought in the Pacific Theater, Second World War. He used to tell me about the soldiers who would charge machine gun nests to save their squad. Said they were either the bravest men he ever met or the dumbest. Sometimes both. He stood, extended his hand. Good luck, Marcus. You're going to need it. The formal challenge arrived that afternoon. Not from the Drex or Velcorn, but from someone unexpected, Prince Thaxter of the Andromeda Syndicate. Viola's cousin. A legitimate suitor with direct bloodline claims. The challenge was worded carefully, invoking ancient protocols. Prince Thaxter accused Marcus of deliberately sabotaging the courtship trials, of using human deception to manipulate Princess Viola. He demanded formal resolution, a trial by advocate. In syndicate culture, a trial by advocate was part debate, part combat, part psychological warfare. Each side would present their case before the court. Questions would be asked. Truths would be extracted, sometimes painfully. The loser would be exiled, their species barred from court for a generation. Marcus stood in his quarters, reading the challenge document, when Viola arrived. She didn't knock. Royalty rarely did. "You can't accept this," she said immediately. "I don't think I have a choice." "You have every choice. Withdraw. Leave court. This isn't your fight." "Then, whose fight is it?" Marcus set down the document. "Your cousin is challenging me because I interfered with the trials." "He's right. I did. I should answer for that." "You're human, Marcus. You don't understand what a trial by advocate means in our culture. Thaxter has been training for political combat since he was born. He'll dissect every word you speak, find every weakness, expose every vulnerability. And he won't just defeat you, he'll humiliate you so thoroughly that Earth itself becomes a joke. Maybe I'll surprise him." Viola moved closer, and her expression was something Marcus had never seen before, fear. "I can't protect you in the trial. By law, I must remain neutral." "If you accept, you face him alone." "I know." "Then, why are you doing this?" Marcus thought about that. About the child's toy, about crossing the forbidden space, about every choice that had led him to this moment. Because running now would mean everything before was a lie. And I don't want it to be a lie. Something shifted in Viola's expression. She reached out with all four arms, and pulled him into an embrace that was simultaneously alien and achingly familiar. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish," she whispered. "Can I be both?" She laughed against his shoulder. It sounded like crying. The trial was set for the next day. Marcus spent the night preparing, reviewing what little information he could find about syndicate legal traditions. It wasn't encouraging. The last trial by advocate had lasted 6 hours and ended with the losing party suffering what the records politely called neurological dissolution. The syndicate took truth very seriously. When dawn came, or whatever passed for dawn on a space station that orbited a binary star, Marcus dressed in his formal uniform. If he was going to represent humanity, he might as well look the part. The grand chamber was packed. Every delegate, every observer, every being with enough status to demand entry had come to watch. The human who had disrupted the court would finally answer for his presumption. Entertainment was promised. Blood, possibly. Justice, certainly. Prince Thaxter stood on the challenger's platform, his ceremonial armor marking him as both warrior and scholar. He was larger than Viola, his 4 arms thick with muscle, his obsidian eyes cold with purpose. When he looked at Marcus, there was no hatred, just certainty. The certainty of someone who had already won. Queen Zaratha presided from her throne. Princess Viola sat in the heir's position, her expression carefully neutral. Marcus stood on the respondent's platform, alone, and tried not to think about the fact that he was probably about to destroy Earth's entire diplomatic future. "The trial by advocate is called to order," Zaratha announced. Her voice carried through the chamber without amplification, a trick of acoustics and power. Prince Thaxter of the Andromeda Syndicate has challenged Captain Marcus Rivera of Earth. The charge: deliberate interference in sacred courtship trials. The stakes: truth and consequence. Begin. Thaxter moved first. His voice was smooth, practiced, the voice of someone trained in rhetoric from birth. Captain Rivera, you are human, yes? Yes. And humans are new to the galactic community. Barely 2 generations since first contact. Correct. Yet you felt qualified to stand in this court. To occupy space reserved for beings of status and power. To influence trials that will determine the future of entire star systems. Thaxter's tone was gentle, almost pitying. Tell the court, what makes you believe you have that right? Marcus took a breath. In his military training, they'd taught him about combat. About reading your opponent, finding their weakness, striking true. This was combat. Just with words instead of weapons. I don't believe I have that right, Your Highness. The chamber stirred. Thaxter's expression flickered with surprise. Then, you admit your presence is illegitimate? I admit, I have no traditional claim to status in this court. But rights aren't always about tradition. Sometimes they're about necessity. Necessity? Thaxter's voice sharpened. Explain. A child needed help. No one else moved. That created necessity. Protocol dictates that guards handle such situations. Protocol would have humiliated an innocent family. I chose a different path. Thaxter paced his platform, and Marcus could see the calculation in his eyes. So you place your judgment above established law. Your human sensibilities above millennia of syndicate tradition. I place compassion above convenience. That's not a human trait. That's universal. Is it? Thaxter turned to address the court. Let us examine human compassion. Captain Rivera, your species has a documented history of warfare, genocide, environmental destruction. You nearly destroyed your own planet through greed and short-sightedness. And yet you dare to lecture this court on moral superiority? The chamber murmured agreement. It was a strong point, one Marcus had no good defense against. Earth's history was brutal, ugly, inexcusable in many ways. You're right, Marcus said quietly. The murmuring stopped. Humanity has done terrible things. We've been cruel, stupid, destructive. We've hurt each other, and our world in ways that shame us. He paused. But that's exactly why I understand the importance of small moments of kindness. Because I come from a species that knows what happens when you always choose power over compassion. We've lived the consequences. Thaxter's eyes narrowed. So you admit your species is morally compromised. I admit we're imperfect. All species are. The question isn't whether we've made mistakes. The question is whether we learn from them. And have you? Has humanity learned? Marcus thought about Earth. About the generations of effort to repair the damage, to build something better. About the countless humans who chose differently, who fought for change, who believed improvement was possible. We're trying, he said. That's all anyone can do. Try to be better than we were. Thaxter smiled, and it was not kind. How inspirational. But this trial is not about human philosophy. It's about your specific actions. You interfered with Princess Viola's courtship trials. You influenced her decisions. You, a being of no status, presumed to judge those far superior to yourself. He moved to the edge of his platform. Tell me, Captain, did Princess Viola ask you to interfere? No. Did you consider the political ramifications of your actions? Not in that moment, no. Did you think about how your presence would undermine legitimate suitors? How it would cast doubt on the entire trial process? No. So you acted impulsively, without thought, without consideration for anyone except yourself. Marcus felt the trap closing. Every answer was honest, and every answer made him look reckless, selfish, dangerous. Thaxter was good. He was dismantling Marcus piece by piece, using truth as a weapon. "I acted on instinct," Marcus said slowly. "But that doesn't mean I acted without consideration. It means I considered what mattered most and acted accordingly." "And what mattered most? Your pride? Your desire for attention? A child's dignity? One child, against the stability of an entire political structure?" "Yes." The word hung in the chamber. Thaxter stared at him, and Marcus could see the prince struggling to understand. How could anyone choose so small a thing over something so vast? "You would destabilize everything for one child's toy," Thaxter said finally. "I would preserve one child's dignity over any amount of political convenience," Marcus corrected. "Because political structures that require children to suffer for their stability are structures that deserve to be destabilized." The chamber erupted. Not in agreement or disagreement, but in shock. The human had just suggested that syndicate traditions, millennia of carefully balanced protocol, might be flawed. Queen Zaratha raised one hand, and silence fell instantly. "Captain Rivera, you are aware that you are insulting this court." "I'm aware I'm challenging this court, Your Majesty." "There's a difference." "Explain that difference." Marcus took a breath. This was it. The moment where he either found the right words or destroyed everything. "An insult suggests disrespect. I have enormous respect for this court, for syndicate culture, for everything you built. But respect doesn't mean blind acceptance. Sometimes it means caring enough to ask hard questions." "And your question is?" "Whether any system that prioritizes procedure over people is truly worth preserving." The silence this time was absolute. Marcus had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He challenged not just Thaxter, not just the trials, but the fundamental philosophy of the syndicate's power structure. Thaxter recovered first. "You dare. I dare to be honest," Marcus interrupted. "That's what this trial is about, isn't it? Truth? Then here's truth. I crossed that space because it was right. I would do it again. And if that makes me unfit for this court, then this court values the wrong things." Prince Thaxter's face darkened with fury. "You arrogant, the trial continues," Queen Zaratha said, her voice cutting through the rising anger. She looked at Marcus, and her expression was unreadable. "Captain Rivera, you claim to value individual dignity over systemic stability. Do you understand what you're advocating? Chaos. The collapse of order. Every being pursuing their own sense of right without regard for collective structure. I'm advocating for systems that serve people, not the reverse, Your Majesty. A lovely ideal. How do you propose implementing it without destroying everything we've built?" "I don't propose implementing anything. I'm not here to reform the syndicate. I'm here to answer for my actions. And my action was simple. I helped a child." "If that's a crime in your system, then convict me. But don't ask me to apologize for it." Viola stood suddenly. Every eye turned to her. "Mother, I request the right to speak." "The heir may speak." Viola descended from her platform and walked to the center of the chamber, equidistant from Marcus and Thaxter. "This trial is about my courtship, my choice. And I have remained silent while others debate my future. That ends now." She turned to Thaxter. "Cousin, you claim Captain Rivera interfered with the trials. You're correct. He did. But interference is not automatically wrongful. It can also be clarifying." "Clarifying how?" Thaxter demanded. "It revealed what I truly value. Not strength. Not intelligence. Not political acumen, though all those matter. It revealed that I value someone who acts from principle rather than calculation. Someone who sees a person in need and helps regardless of cost." She looked at Marcus. Captain Rivera showed me what I was missing in every other suitor. Genuine moral courage. Moral courage? Thaxter's voice dripped with disdain. He's a human. A species barely evolved past tribalism. He's a person who made a hard choice look easy because he knew it was right. When was the last time you did that, cousin? When was the last time any suitor did that? Viola's voice rose. I've spent 3 solar cycles evaluating genetic compatibility, political advantage, strategic alignment. And I rejected everyone because none of them saw me as anything but a prize to be won. Captain Rivera is the first being who treated me like a person. Because he doesn't understand the stakes, Thaxter argued. Or because he understands different stakes. Human stakes. Individual stakes. She turned to address the full court. We mock humans for their primitiveness, their youth, their messy, chaotic approach to civilization. But they have something we've lost in millennia of careful protocol. They remember that systems exist to serve people, not to control them. Queen Zaratha stood. The movement brought absolute silence. Daughter, are you suggesting we abandon syndicate tradition based on the actions of one impulsive human? I'm suggesting we remember why we created those traditions in the first place, Mother. To protect dignity. To ensure fairness. To build something worth preserving. Viola's 4 arms spread wide. But somewhere along the way, we started protecting the system instead of the people it was meant to serve. Captain Rivera reminded me of that difference. By breaking our laws. By following a higher law. The law of basic decency. The chamber held its breath. Queen and princess, mother and daughter, locked in a battle of philosophies that transcended any individual trial. Finally, Zaratha spoke. Prince Thaxter, you have challenged Captain Rivera's right to influence this court. Princess Volula has defended his actions. The decision, ultimately, is mine. She turned her ancient gaze to Marcus. Captain, you are either a revolutionary or a fool. Possibly both. You have disrupted centuries of tradition with a single impulsive act. The consequences of that disruption will echo for generations. Marcus met her eyes. I understand, Your Majesty. Do you? Do you truly understand what you started? Questions about protocol. Doubts about tradition. Other species wondering if there might be a better way. She descended from her throne, and Marcus realized she was actually frightened. Not of him, but of what he represented. You are dangerous, Captain Rivera. Not because you're strong or clever, but because you're genuine. And genuine moral conviction is the most destabilizing force in any political system. Then exile me, Your Majesty. Send me back to Earth. End this. I can't. The word shocked everyone, including, apparently, Zaratha herself. She turned to Vaila. Your daughter has made her choice clear. She sees value in human philosophy, in moral courage over political calculation. If I exile you now, I lose her trust. Possibly forever. So you're trapped, Marcus said quietly. So we're all trapped, Captain. You, me, my daughter, Prince Thaxter, every delegate in this chamber. Trapped by a single moment of kindness that we can't figure out how to handle. She looked at Thaxter. Prince, your challenge is noted. Your arguments are sound. But the trial by advocate requires absolute truth, and, here is truth, Captain Rivera acted from genuine compassion. Misguided, perhaps. Disruptive, certainly. But genuine. And our law respects genuine action, even when it challenges tradition. You're ruling in his favor? Thaxter's voice was incredulous. I'm ruling that there is no clear violation. He broke protocol for defensible moral reasons. That makes this a question of philosophy, not law. And philosophical questions cannot be resolved through trial by advocate. Then, how are they resolved? Someone called from the gallery. Zaratha smiled, and it was terrifying. Through consequence. Through time. Through the slow, painful process of cultures learning to understand each other. She turned back to Marcus. You will remain at court, Captain. Not as a suitor, you have neither the status nor the genetic compatibility for formal courtship. But as an advisor, a voice of human perspective, a living reminder that there are other ways to think about power and dignity. Your Majesty, I don't think your thoughts are irrelevant. This is not a request. This is a sentence. Her expression softened slightly. But perhaps not an entirely cruel one. You wish to help. Now you will help us understand what it means to prioritize compassion over convenience. That is a lesson we apparently need to learn. The trial ended, not with victory or defeat, but with ambiguity. Marcus remained at court, his status undefined, his future uncertain. The suitors withdrew, confused and angry. The delegates whispered about human influence, about the erosion of tradition, about the dangerous precedent being set. And Princess Vaila watched it all with an expression that might have been hope or might have been fear. That night, she found him on the observation deck again. The same place, the same stars, but everything had changed. You could have apologized, she said. Withdrawn. Made this simple. I could have. Why didn't you? Marcus thought about all the answers he could give. Strategic ones, philosophical ones, romantic ones. But Vaila had asked for truth, and truth was all he had left. Because I'm learning that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. And you made me want to choose right over easy. She moved to stand beside him, close enough to touch. My mother is right. You're dangerous. You're destabilizing everything I've known, everything I was trained to value. You're making me question systems I've relied on my entire life. I'm sorry. Don't be. Necessary questions are always uncomfortable. She turned to face him. In my culture, when we bond, we share everything. Thoughts, memories, emotions. There are no secrets between bonded pairs. It's the most intimate connection imaginable, and the most terrifying. I can imagine. Can you? Can you imagine binding yourself to someone completely? Giving up the privacy of your own mind? Marcus thought about that. About trust at that level. About vulnerability, so complete it became its own form of strength. It sounds like either the best thing or the worst thing, depending on who you're bound to. Exactly. And I've spent 3 solar cycles terrified of making the wrong choice. Of binding myself to someone who sees me as an asset. Of spending centuries with someone's calculated ambition living in my head. She reached out, all 4 hands, and placed them gently on his shoulders. And then you appeared. A human. A species we barely acknowledge. Someone with no right to exist in my world. And for the first time, I considered that binding might not be a prison. It might be freedom. Vaila, I'm not asking for anything, Marcus. I'm not even sure what's possible between us. Our biology is different. Our cultures are different. Our entire frameworks for understanding relationship are different. Her obsidian eyes held his. But I wanted you to know that you've changed something in me. You've made me believe that genuine connection might be possible. And that's a gift I didn't expect. Marcus didn't know what to say. Didn't know if there were words adequate to the moment. So he did what felt right. He reached up and placed his hands over hers. Human and syndicate. 5 fingers and 4 arms. 2 beings from different worlds, finding connection in the space between. They stood like that, watching the stars turn, while the galaxy shifted around them. Not knowing what would come next. Not needing to. Sometimes, the right choice was simply to be present. To be genuine. to be real in a world that valued performance over authenticity. And sometimes that was enough. The weeks that followed brought change. Subtle at first, then accelerating. Other species began sending different types of delegates to court, not military leaders or political strategists, but scholars, artists, philosophers, beings who could speak to values rather than just power. The courtship trials didn't end, but they evolved. Questions became less about strategic advantage and more about compatibility of thought. Earth's status shifted too. The human delegation grew. Not because humanity had become powerful, but because they represented something the galaxy was beginning to value, a different perspective. A reminder that civilization could be built on foundations other than calculated self-interest. And, at the center of it all, Marcus and Viola navigated something neither quite understood. Not quite courtship. Not quite friendship. Something new, something undefined, something that terrified the court bureaucrats, who needed everything labeled and categorized. But Queen Zaratha watched and said nothing, because she was old enough to recognize something rare when she saw it. And she was wise enough to know that the best political outcomes often came from the moments when beings stopped calculating and started genuinely connecting. The child whose toy had started everything grew. Her parents sent messages of gratitude. Other families began seeking human advisors, human perspectives on problems they'd been solving through pure protocol. And one day, many months later, Marcus stood again on the observation deck. Viola beside him, as had become their custom. The stars turning. The galaxy shifting. Two beings learning what it meant to build something real in a universe of calculated advantage. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Crossing that space. Starting all of this." Marcus thought about his old life. Simple. Defined. Safe. He thought about this new existence. Complex. Undefined. Dangerous in ways he was still discovering. "Not for a second," he said. Viola smiled. The expression had become familiar now, comfortable. "Good. Because I'm still not sure what we're building here, but I know it's important." "How do you know?" "Because it scares the people who benefit from everything staying the same. And that's usually a sign you're doing something right." They stood in silence, watching the stars, not knowing what the future held, not needing to, because they'd learned the most important lesson. Sometimes the right choice isn't the calculated one. Sometimes it's the genuine one. The choice that costs everything and risks everything and offers no guarantees. The choice to be real in a universe of performance. The choice to cross the forbidden space, not because protocol allows it, but because someone needs help. That was the choice that changed everything. Not through power or strategy or careful political maneuvering, but through the simple, revolutionary act of choosing compassion over convenience. And in the end, that made all the difference. 2/2